Okay, so this question was asked in our Discord. Do we have a set of templates with kind of ready-made prompts that you can use to configure your bots? And yes, absolutely, we absolutely do. So if you actually go to the marketplace right here, you're going to see a set of bots that you can clone into your account and kind of get started with quickly, right? Depending on your use case. And let me show you one actually that I cloned just a little while ago. This one here. So once you get in here, go to the update section, and then we'll get to the other part of the question, but go to this update section and then go to the base system prompt. And this is what you can take and modify for your use case. Now, as far as any tips I have on writing these base system prompts, the first tip is that you want to make it organized, okay? You want to make it clean, and the reason for that is actually, well, in some ways it's good for the bot because, you know, adding structure to using markdown, for example, helps add emphasis to certain parts and helps keep things organized. But the reason you want to do it is because if you ever need to look back at that prompt, it's going to help you as a human to have it organized and structured like this. And don't get me wrong, like I said, it does help the bot as well. But technically, you could probably just throw everything together in one long string of text, and the bot would probably understand it just fine. But it does seem to help. First off, you can make comments, okay? So if you want to make comments in here for yourself to kind of explain why you took a certain approach or call something out, you can do that in our system. This doesn't get sent to ChatGPT or to the models, okay? So it does get stripped out, which is good to know because otherwise it might affect the behavior of the bot. From there, what you want to do is, if you're not familiar with Markdown, I would just Google it, or possibly maybe I can I'll probably do a quick tutorial video on just kind of what Markdown is, and I'll probably show how you can use ChatGPT to teach it to you. But it's so simple. It's really just basically headings here. This is like an H1, basically. I don't know if you're familiar with kind of web development, but this is a heading 1, okay? And if you wanted to make it an H2, you know, a subheading of that, a smaller heading essentially, you would make 2 of the pound signs there. But that's kind of really the basics. And like I said, you can get ChatGPT to quickly give you an intro to that, and I'll make a video. But from here, I always tell it kind of what it is, right? This is who you are. Bam. This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is who you work for. From there, you want to go into, or at least what I do, and seems to work the best, is you want to define the overall goals of the bot, right? What is it doing? Is it just answering users' questions that visit the website, you know, for questions on a product, or is it, you know, trying to schedule leads? Is it trying to set appointments? Is it trying to do all 3? Let it know high level what it's doing, and then you want to give additional details, right? So tell it how to answer questions. You can look at what I did here and get some ideas. And then you see here, this says this section is all about additional information about Stammer.ai. The reason I included this here is because there is always some very key information that you want to know about a business, right? Pricing is super important. Just general information about the business and what they offer. And it's often a good idea to dump that data into the base system prompt. Now, you of course don't want that base system prompt to get too large, right? Each of the models have their own limit as far as the number of what's called tokens that they accept. And actually, I'm just literally realizing that we don't list what those limitations are. So I'll need to make a note really quickly to do that in just a moment. Let me pause the video. Okay, so I did write that down. But in general, GPT-4 Turbo, which is the model that I'm using, and we're going to talk about in just a moment, because one of your other questions was, you know, that GPT-4, which model basically is everyone using? GPT-4 Turbo has a very large context window. What a context window is, really simply, is how much, you know, information you can send it total. And the way they kind of break that down is tokens. It's the concept of tokens. Let me show you actually a token counter here. Token counter. Oh, and I think actually, don't they have one? Yeah. So here is a kind of a live JavaScript tokenizer. So if you take this, let's actually copy this, and you can kind of think of tokens as words, but right here, you're going to see this is 748 tokens, right? So you're well within the token limits. We will get those, like I said, put on the page. I think what we can probably do is just put something here like token limits, and then maybe a pop-up, pops up with token limits for each of the models. But so you don't want to put a ton of information in there. You don't want to book in there. Or it's going to cause an error. And we're actually going to get a token counter built into this user interface. We're working on that. So that will prevent that as well, but not a ton of information. And like I said, you can actually go to kind of this website here, and we will put this into the user interface as well, probably in this pop-up that I'm talking about. And that's how you can get an idea of how many tokens that you have for your base system prompt. The normal GPT-4 model, I think, if I remember correctly, was 4,096 tokens. You may want to double check that. GPT-4 Turbo is much, much larger. I need to look up the actual number. GPT 3.5, much smaller context window, and we've actually had people occasionally put too much information into the base system prompt with 3.5. And that's actually a good segue into kind of your other question, which was about which model are most people using? So these days, everyone's using GPT-4 Turbo. We actually had metrics on this, and I think it was like 90% or something. We had those metrics from the OpenAI API dashboard, and I think it was like 90% was GPT-4 Turbo. So that's what we highly recommend, okay? So the message, it's 10 message credits for one response. And as you can see, GPT-4, I have honestly not seen a big difference between GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo. They've done a great job with Turbo, so I definitely recommend using it. Now, that being said, if you have a very complex use case, you may want to try GPT-4 and see how it works for you. At this point, I wouldn't recommend GPT 3.5. We probably will put in the UI here a note, not recommended. And actually, let me write that down. You're seeing kind of product development live here. Okay. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend GPT 3.5 unless your use case is super simple. If it's just answering questions from the knowledge base, then 3.5, may be good for you, but really you should test it, right? Test 3.5, see if it works for you. Keep in mind that smaller context window that I was talking about, so keep that in mind. But really, what you need to do overall, in my opinion, is you need to sell the value prop of these chatbots, because one of your questions was you were thinking, I think, that some of your customers wouldn't like the pricing that you'd have to charge for kind of GPT-4 Turbo. And really, what you need to do is you need to explain the value proposition of these chatbots. Now, of course, I don't know your use case specifically, right? But the core use case that a lot of these chatbots are being used for and sold successfully with is the knowledge base, right? It's a very simple use case, but you've got a customer that visits your website and it answers questions based on whatever product or service you're selling and the information you give it. Now, what you have to tell the business, or what you have to illustrate for them, is what is the value to them really? They need to not be focused on the cost. What are they doing today, or what should they be doing today to provide the same level of service? Well, to provide a chatbot on your website that answers questions 24/7, you basically have to hire 3 people to do that, right? And train them. And you have to make sure they consistently answer the questions the same way, right? You have to track them, train them, maybe even hire someone to manage them. So that's 3 people, 8 hours shifts for each of them to get that same 24/7, result. And how much it would cost you to do that really depends on, the approach you use there. So that is what I would focus on. You can even create, data, in your marketing material. I think we actually have some. I will find out, and Ross and Drew can send that over. But you need to present that. Hey, this is what you're able to replace with your business by going with one of these chatbots. And of course, if they don't have any kind of chatbot on their website with no AI, that's an even easier sell, because then you need to sell the value prop of having a chatbot on their website. Any customer can come there. It's already been proven that people these days are no one So the alternative to not having a chatbot on your website is your customers have to open a ticket or something, right? In order to get help. No one wants to do that. No one wants to do that. And the other alternative, if you don't have the ability to open a ticket, is that they've got to search the website. And let me tell you, I don't even search websites to look up, frequently asked questions and stuff. So having a chatbot right there, a very, very intelligent, chatbot trained on your business data is incredibly valuable. It's much more likely to lead to a good user experience. And not having to pay 3 people to do the same thing is very valuable. And that's what you need to focus on. Sell the value prop rather than, focusing on the cost of the message credits. Hopefully that makes sense. But let me know if you have any questions here. And sorry this was so long. I tend to rant sometimes.